Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth episode of Keeping Up with Ambassadors. Welcome to our new host, Adea.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Jaime.
Glad to have you here. How are you doing?
Glad to be here. I'm doing very well, thank you. I really like being here right now.
I'm glad. It's an honor to have you here on our platform. And just for the new viewers, I'd like to introduce a bit of what we're doing here, what this context is, and Keeping Up with the Ambassadors is basically an idea that was born from the desire of me, one of the Charney interns, to sort of like catch up on what the ambassadors of the Charney Resolution Centers are doing, where they are in the world, what projects they're working on, and what potential future collaborations can look like. And for those who don't know, the Ambassadors Program is born from a collaboration between the Eastern Mediterranean International School and the Charney Center, where the alumni of the school, that is a peace and sustainability based school, after they graduate, they go to their home country or to their new university and work on different projects. And the idea is to keep this alumni network together and to have them collaborate so that they can pursue and keep working on the mission that EMIS and Charney share, which is to foster dialogue and cooperation on a diplomatic and human level. And so this is our new ambassador, Adea. It's great to have you here.
It's great.
Yeah, if you want to take a moment and just tell our viewers who you are and where you're from.
So I'm Adea Begaj. I'm an EMIS alumni from the graduating class of 2022. I am from Albania, and I'm currently in my gap year, preparing to continue my project as a Charney ambassador.
What led you to take a gap year?
Well, when I first went to EMIS, I had this pretty straightforward way of thinking that I was going to do school, I was going to graduate, and then immediately I was going to go to university. But then I didn't really know all these possibilities that I can have until I met the Charney Resolution Center and attending my first peace simulation as a student, and then going forward as working as a committee member, which really struck this passion in me that I want to do more about these sort of activities and peace simulation Charney Resolution Center in specific. And I was really encouraged by this activity as well to take a gap year and try to do more, start projects that will really encourage people or spread awareness about these sort of peace talks, simulations, about these negotiation trainings, and this mission in general that the center has.
Okay, that's good to hear. And I'm glad to hear you're so excited about the center's
Thank you.
projects. And do you know in general what your area of interest is for university or perhaps a career direction?
Yes, it's kind of polar, my interest, because I'm also a person that wants to try everything and somewhat has talent in doing everything, but mostly liberal arts. Where I will be able to learn to take information from multiple fields and then try to apply them as best as I can in different projects that I want to use that mostly have the theme of service to my community or other communities that really needs to be put out there regarding their different societal issues or the help that they need, which strongly comes from my background. I come from a sort of underprivileged country that has never had that much help or awareness. So I want to give aid to it. I want to be a voice for these different communities, and whatever help I can do, I will be glad to do it.
Oh, that's very inspiring. Glad to hear. And I'm curious, how did your 2 years at EMIS sort of shape your worldview and the way you're talking now about wanting to give back to your community back home and in general have some sort of like impact and a voice?
Yeah. Well, my class had to go through some very wacky, let's say, world problems. It was the pandemic, and then there were the May missile attacks, and then the shootings towards graduation. So I cannot say that it was a peaceful environment to be in. However, these sort of happenings and occurrences really gave me some sort of reality check that nowhere is perfect and nowhere can there be found a place that truly has no problems. But that's not an issue because we learned from these problems. We learned the severity of the issues of the place we're living in at the time. And therefore, by these sort of experiences, I was really inspired to do more, not only for my school environment where I was in. Therefore, being part of cultural committee, I led multiple cultural days and events in the school to give power to this international breath that we were in. Was part of peace simulation, the Charney Center, to be more in touch and more aware about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that we were living in and experiencing firsthand. And also just attending any school activity that could help any new students or current students in my class, my other peers, to just feel at ease, feel comfortable with whatever was happening in the school. And not only that, but also the academic processes that we went through were really global. Of course, it was the IB diploma, so we were all raised and prepared to be global citizens. So these 2 years in EMIS, I can conclude that really helped me expand my global horizon, not only academically, but also in the social aspect of everything that was going on, specifically in the region we were in.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's very relatable. And I agree that sort of like being so deeply ingrained and embedded in a community that is so diverse and conflictual and difficult, and there's constantly things happening and
Bashes at you so
yeah,
fast.
exactly. And it's sort of a bubble that is protected, but the outside world still like has an influence. And so it's
Exactly.
a big learning curve for people to go through that.
But it also makes them more adaptable to anything that can hit that bubble, as you said. Like the way we were, I like to think is we were like a bunch of clays, small clays, and everything that would happen, the pandemic, school, just the conflict that we were exposed to really shaped us into being these different statues, let's say. All of us not the same, but still affected by the same situations that made us grow into something beautiful from the small balls of clay.
I like that metaphor actually. And I like the idea that sort of like everyone comes to MS with sort of like there's already some material because
Yeah,
our experiences, our culture, our identity, our family. And then in those years, like 16 to 18, you're so malleable. And so all the experiences sort of like shape you and then you become or start becoming because it's not like it ends
yeah.
when you leave MS.
MS ends.
Oh,
I like to think it as a start to
yeah.
something bigger.
I'm curious about that. How has it been leaving the bubble? Like MS,
Oh,
not to make it too sad, but how has that been?
oh, I tremendously miss it. Like it was those 2 years of living in a community that was so close together and brought even closer by the things that would happen basically on a monthly basis, like COVID updates or anything would happen in the country. It just felt like I had spent a lifetime with these people, this diverse community, these people that I call family at this point, these staff members and other groups that I worked with that I'm so closely tied to at this point. And leaving the bubble, let's say, physically feels as if something was taken away from me. But then when I sat and like started my gap year, was doing my things, my projects and everything, I was like, this part has not left me. I've just physically been attached from it. Everything that I've learned, everything that I've been through, my friends, my colleagues, my teachers, everyone that I've worked with and have helped the pleasure being with them is still with me in the form of my talents, my experiences, my toolbox of skills that I have that I put to use not only in a day-to-day basis but also in any project that I want to start. So yes, it has been harsh, quote unquote, and just sad kind of to leave EMIS and graduate from it. But everything that I had from it, I still hold it dear to my heart and also try to apply as much of it in my day-to-day life, whether in the new people that I meet or the new projects that I start.
Yeah, again, I agree, and then it's you phrase it in a nice way because yes, there's that level of sort of like grief because
Yeah,
it's an experience that was so meaningful and it's over, but then at the same time, it's not like it disappeared and all the people you've encountered throughout the 2 years, all the experiences like shaped the way you are now and will keep shaping you because like I graduated, that makes me feel old, but I graduated 3 years ago and it's still like in almost in my daily life, I still see how the experiences I did at EMIS, the people keep influencing the way I go around the world and talk to people and everything.
Yeah, somehow they don't feel that far away. Like, of course, you graduated 2 years ago, I graduated like a year ago, kind of, but they still feel so close as experiences from the magnitude of things that we have learned. Like, we still feel as we've come freshly out of high school and into the world, because that's how fresh the knowledge that we have gotten and the skills that we have learned feel to us, I think. That's how I see it.
Yeah. I like the perspective. And I'm curious now to dive a bit deeper. So you were mentioning how in your second year you were part of the peace simulation committee. Maybe do you want
Yes.
to tell me a bit about actually first how it was in your first year being a participant?
Um, So I would like to say and also emphasize that when I first heard of peace simulation as an event in the school, I was like, interesting. It's of course an event that has to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and these simulations, negotiations, and peace talks. And I was like, yes, that's pretty closely tied to the mission of the school. But then when we were explained much more, then we would be separated into delegations that would have to talk about the issues of it's okay about the issues of the different sides, the Israeli and Palestinian delegations. I was like, oh, if I have a right to choose, I will go with the Palestinian delegation. For I feel like I have more knowledge about it, and that was my main perspective. Like, I had a tunnel vision towards Israel that I'm going to talk about the Palestinian side, but I just didn't realize that I wasn't educated enough regarding the issue, and that's completely fine in my opinion, because a lot of students come to the school, they don't know much about the conflict, but that's just not something to be ashamed for. You're in the school, you learn about it throughout the process and the different activities that are being held. So when I was put into my delegations, I was in the Israeli delegation. And at that point, I felt very insecure with my knowledge about the Israeli side of the conflict. And I felt a bit salty, maybe a bit picky, and went to the committee leader and said, hey, can I maybe switch my positions? Because I feel like I would perform much better on this side rather on the side that I'm on. And they told me something that I still use as like a motto in my life, basically: try to put yourself outside of your comfort zone to learn much more and expand your skills on what you already own. Like, put
Was it
yourself out there.
I'm curious. Who was
Sorry?
the committee leader?
I talked to Sarah
Okay, okay.
from Czech Republic. Yeah, I talked to her. And I was like, man, but that's gonna make me feel uncomfortable. Like, I won't perform as well. I won't like my performance in the delegation with my friends. I will let them down. I will disappoint them. But then when the event started, I was like, this is not about me or like my solid performance in the group. This is about teamwork. This is about me learning from the opposite delegation as well from my own people in my delegation. So then I found out that yes, maybe I'm not a good speaker. However, I'm very good at research. So that was the section that I went into throughout my delegation. And it was fun working in the opposite side because I was seeing how people were challenged, how they were overcoming their challenges of maybe not knowing much about this side, but knowing much more about the other side. So I like the dynamic of exchanging knowledge between the two delegations, yes, but also how the negotiations were going, because everyone was just learning from each other. And I was like, this is so much better than what I thought. I'm learning. I'm not being put in the spot. I'm not being left out from the conversation. Everyone is working with each other and encouraging each other to do something and give something to these resolutions that we have to work on. And after the event ended, we had something like talking to another team and trying to make resolutions with each other. And I was like, okay, now the scale is becoming much bigger. Many more people are being included. We talked outside in a big circle, and I was like, okay, maybe our ideas are gonna like come together very easily. No, it was a big challenge because they had different resolutions from ours, and we had a different approach from what they had in their negotiations with their teams. And we were like, you know what? In the end of the day, it's not about fighting and who wins, quote unquote. It's because it's about coming together, making a resolution, trying to agree on something that is much bigger than our own ideas, much bigger than our own aspirations. But we're still going to try to make something first fun out of it and also useful.
Yeah.
So that's what we finally came to an agreement, I think, if I can remember correctly, about one thing we didn't agree. And then the experience ended, and I was like, wow, I really want it to be longer. After I had found that confidence into putting myself out there, like Sarah said. So then next year I became a committee leader, like part of the committee basically. And I was like, yes, now everything that I learned from my first experience, I want to encourage to the students so they don't feel that sort of unease, that sort of insecurity when going into their delegations and trying to present. And that was my main focus going to the committee. Like, I think in my first meeting ever with the committee, one of the things I strongly pointed out was that I want these kids to be put, as they would say, in uncomfortable positions and not respect their choices, quote unquote, for the delegations that they wanted to be in, to make them put themselves out there, as Sarah said, to make them see the whole issue from a perspective that they probably wouldn't, let's say, agree with or want to be included in. And another part that I worked as a committee member was the media and marketing, because I saw that as much of an impact that this peace simulation event had, it wasn't being spread out to a lot of people. It was only in this EMIS bubble per se, and the people that worked in the Charney Center. So I was like, I'm going to take this media aspect of working for the committee seriously, to try and spread as much awareness, to try and make the students much more engaged, and maybe even their friends who are not in EMIS, for this mission, for this purpose, to be much more known out there, to encourage many more people to join. So yeah, I think in fewer words, I would say that there's been a growth from my era as a student participating in the peace simulation that felt sort of insecure in her knowledge and didn't want to expand from her comfort zone, to someone who encourages not only myself to still be out there, but also other students to try their best at something that they probably don't know as much.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Wow, that was a lot.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Yeah, I'm thinking about one of the things you said at the beginning when you were sort of struggling with the idea that you had to represent a side that maybe was a bit more uncomfortable for you to represent. And I agree that that's one of the strengths of the peace simulation, because as you said, it's not about really the people participating in it, and they're more like their role is to like represent whatever the issues of that time are. And it becomes then a little less personal, but that's also because that's the design and the format of this peace simulation. At EMIS, there's many other activities that sort of like dwell deeper into like personal stories and personal experiences and more smaller scale. The idea of the peace simulation is, let's look at these big issues and let's look how the only way to actually move forward is if we compromise. And
exactly.
And that doesn't mean that like one side needs to give everything. And of course, there's like guiding principles of human rights, etc., that needs to be centered. But it is, as you were saying, this game of sort of like finding a middle ground and giving up and being uncomfortable. And
yeah,
I'm curious, either from your experience or from the experience leading, other than sort of like representing something that was not your own opinion, what do you think are some of the challenges that the students face?
I think it will be teamwork, because you're put in positions with people that probably don't necessarily agree with your views sometimes, and that's a challenge on its own, that you have to somehow find a dynamic between the people that you are working with first, because if you just go into the team the day of the simulation, you're like, whoa, I just found out that my teammate doesn't really like doing this, but it's something that needs to be done to encourage much more fruitful conversations. So what will I do? You're just stuck in the spot. So even it's another thing that I try to emphasize in like committee meetings, and all of us try to work with, that we have these preparation days for the facilitators and their specific teams and delegations to work with, getting to know the topic they're going to discuss, as well as getting to know their teammates, so they can already have a plan going into it, how they're going to construct the whole negotiation talk, how they're going to try to find all the information needed, how they're going to try to be respectful, first of all, to their own teammates, and then to the other delegation they're going to face. Because in the end of the day, this doesn't have to be a debate. This doesn't have to be a fight, quote unquote, on who has more rights in their topic, who doesn't. It's something that both of the sides need to respect and to be understanding of. with the comments coming from one side, then the other side, and how they're going to balance everything out in order to find a peaceful compromise somewhere in the middle. Everything needs to be balanced. So yeah, that's another challenge, having the students to find proper balance in their teams, as well with their facilitators and the topics that they're going to work with.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And something else I was thinking about, because without having to go too much into depth into the peace simulation in itself, I think if we abstract a bit and just think about the structure and the design of the activity in itself, what are, do you think, some of the skills that you have learned, and that maybe my question is whether you were able to apply those skills to other areas of your life?
Well, first of all, I became a much more confident speaker, that's for sure. I remember when I first started at EMIS, I would be so shy, even in classes, only in school activities. I would like just raise my hand, say something in like half a voice, even if it was correct. I just didn't feel that sort of comfort that I feel now after always being put in the spot, put into team activities, especially in the P simulation one, that I was always quote unquote forced by my teammates to speak, give one more argument, give one more idea, fact check other people, confront their ideas. So yeah, I'm a much more confident speaker. I think that's a skill that everyone gets after the first piece simulation. You also get a really good toolbox of skills that regard that I say circle the diplomacy topic. You start to become someone who is pretty objective towards some certain problems, because sometimes you go into debates being very emotional, pretty subjective to some topics that you feel are very close to you. However, that can lead to some misunderstandings, to some problems in different talks or discussions you're going to have, not only the negotiations for peace simulation. So I learned to be more objective towards some things, and wait for the person in front of me to completely explain their idea without me jumping in as a response of my emotional cues and things that I hold very dear to me, because that person in front of me doesn't know that I'm emotional towards these things. So we both need to be respectful, and both of us need to hold an objective position when talking about a certain topic. That's something I also learned. And I would also say I learned to have fun while working, because it was not a very, I mean, yes, it was some sort of heavy duty, quote unquote, to come up with these resolutions about this big topic and issue in the Middle East. But I also was fun to just understand my teammates, see their skills, and apply whatever I knew to this big resolution that we had to come up with, and also take it with some sort of optimism, not to be like, oh, this is a big issue and we cannot have fun anything while talking about it. No, you can have fun also with the opposite delegation that probably is trying to oppose your ideas. This whole experience is for you to learn as much as you can about the conflict, but also about your own personal skills, about your teammates' personal skills, and what you can get from it. So yeah, I would say being more confident, being more objective about certain issues, as well as having fun while working, because what's the point of working if you don't enjoy it?
Yeah, I like, before your last point, I like what you said about the idea that the peace simulation really like pushes for the fact that you need to find an agreement.
Yeah,
And
like you can't get out of
because
it without the
you're so like, you're time constrained and there's pressure and there's stress, and yes, it
yeah.
won't be a perfect agreement, and maybe it won't even be like realistically that possible in the outside world, but I like the idea of sort of like being like, we need to find something, whatever it is, at least as a first step, instead of
Yeah.
sort of like facing how complicated it is and then sort of giving up. And it doesn't mean that the like resolutions found are ideal or that they respect everything. It doesn't matter, because they're not actually being applied. It's more of the like mental exercise that people go through to be like, okay, let's find something. It's difficult, let's compromise.
I think it's also like pretty realistic to what happens in the real world, because it's like, if it was that perfect, that ideal, that you sit down once with all these diplomats, all these politicians, and they find the solution to something that fast within like 2 days, everything would be so much different. But no, it happens that sides don't agree with each other that far. But there's still even one point, if you can agree on, if you can compromise, that's still a much bigger step than just saying, well, we can't do this, we're not agreeing, so we give up.
And I
So
think
that's,
also
yeah,
this is also why in the more recent peace simulation we sort of like a few years ago, students, the delegations had to solve everything. And then we
yeah,
sort of divided into smaller issues, so border, Jerusalem, resources, etc. And that makes the scale a bit smaller and more tractable and more like, okay, we can actually like face this and find more traceable steps. I have
yeah.
one more question. You were telling me at the beginning how in this year during your gap year, you've also been helping a bit from remote with the peace simulation. Do you want to tell me a bit
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, so I actually visited EMIS a bit back during October and November, and I had like the current leader of the peace simulation committee had told me, hey, we have the committee leader, the committee ready. So if like your event was successful, so would you please like want to help us or advise us throughout the way in any shape or form? And I was like, yeah, of course. I love to help. So I sat down with the students as well as the committee leaders, and they talked about all their ideas while I was like in there listening to everything they had to say. And then I started correcting something that first of all had to do with media. There had to be a lot of media preparation because from what we saw last year, still a lot of students did not really know what was going on. So a big focus was media attention, to have as much more engagement from the students as possible, and to have this event go easily. Of course, there's going to be those parts where students have tiny questions or inquiries about the event. That's completely normal, but not to go in with a mass scale of students not knowing what would happen and what would occur. There was also parts of activities. There had to be multiple icebreakers because of course students had to this was inspired from like our last year's activity, icebreakers and getting to know your facilitators and teammates, because that showed that the event would flow much quicker. It would be much more comfortable for the students as well as the facilitators, as well as the outside professional speakers that would come and engage with them, because students would already know, yes, this teammate can do this and I can talk to the speaker about whatever they find. So they were much more organized and orchestrated with each other. I was very pleased with the activity part of the icebreakers and everything the students had to do throughout the 2 days. I think there was a treasure hunt as well as the different activities held by the teachers in school and some outside speakers. And I was also very pleased with the engagement that the students had from the media, marketing, everything. There were always questions being asked by the students, and they were very glad to respond to them either via social media or always having the platform of the committee members ready to answer the questions that any student had at any point. So I think it had a very comfortable flow to everything, and everyone was well informed about what was going on, and had a very nice flow to it.
Okay, thank you. And I'm glad you could be there to help out. To sort of finish our conversation, I'd like to look forward a bit. So I wanted to ask you quickly, how do you see your involvement in the future now that you're a Charney ambassador, and what are some of the potential idea and projects that you'd like to work on?
Well, firstly, there's been this podcast talk that I've had with some of other ambassadors that are interested in starting a project. So I would really like that this podcast is used as the platform for not only explaining the peace simulation event or other events that Attorney Resolution has, or the mission that he wants it to spread through, but we can also talk about our experiences as students in this sort of environment that we were in and this mission that we were exposed to and trying to reach all the time, because it makes it more down to earth and more relatable to other listeners to try and engage, sympathize with this mission that we want to try and spread out. Also, another project that I would really like are having maybe preliminary workshops for students trying to go into peace simulation as like a first-hand experience of what they are to expect and what is going to happen, and try to make them feel much more confident to not go into the event just like I did, feeling insecure myself, unprepared, and every other thing that could really make their experience not as bright as it could be, and make them more encouraged to go on and join these sort of activities, these sort of talks, put themselves out there. I think also I would really like to have different workshops wherever I go. Maybe if I get into university, I can be a Charney representative and get as many people into joining the program to sort of make a branch about spreading this mission, spreading this message, talking about the influence that such activities and this certain organization has in the Israeli in educating people about the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. So basically, I want to do activities that spread as much awareness for people to join this cause, because honestly, it's a noble cause. It's something so good about the community, not only the community of Middle East, but about the whole world, because you don't only learn about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, you don't only learn certain diplomacy skills to apply to that certain issue, but I have a whole toolbox of skills and a bunch of aspirations and passions now that I can apply to everything in my life. I have so much energy, and I am so grateful to this event and this organization and this school that helped me find this profound feeling of wanting to help, be a part of service to any sort of problem in our big society in this world.
That's great. And I think that's a perfect note to end it on, very in line with the mission that we try to push forward here at the Charney Center. And Adea, thank you for tuning in today.
Thank you.
For everyone who watched from home. And yes, I'm excited to see the next projects you'll be working on, and we'll catch up.
I'm excited for them.
Bye-bye.
Bye.